Hello and welcome to the Top Voice podcast. It is February 3rd, and I'm excited to be on with Vinicius David, who, in addition to having the coolest name I've ever heard, is going to talk to us today about AI adoption for small and medium businesses. It's a conversation that we talk a lot about AI on this show, but I think there's an angle here for the entrepreneur, the small business that's trying to figure out where to start, where to go, how to finish, how to scale that he's going to help us with. I'm going to give you a chance, Vinicius, to introduce yourself. Before we do that, if you're tuning in with us live, please do leave a note in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Leave us a question or a comment. We love to get those from everybody. And as always, be sure to subscribe to YouTube, the different various podcast platforms. If you're listening online or listening to the podcast, it's the best way to support the show. So, Vinicius, we met a couple months ago. I'm excited for this conversation. Please tell us who you are, tell us what you do, and we'd love to know a little bit more about your background before we dive in.
Michael, first and foremost, thanks for having me on your show. And good morning or good afternoon, evening, wherever your audience is. I'm super excited to join you and talk about what I've been doing the past couple of years. So basically, my story is very simple. I've been in tech for almost 20 years, splitting my time between the corporate space and startup, all the intersection in between, but always focused on transformation and accelerating growth through technology. And AI was a hobby that I started 8, 10 years ago studying. And I still remember fighting lawyers saying that I could not use the term because it was marketing. So and here we are. And today I've been focusing a lot on helping small and medium companies to scale faster and at a fraction of the cost that it would have taken them to compete with a large one.
Yeah. It's a wonderful niche that I want to really dive into. And maybe before we get into some of the particulars, how did you get into that niche? How did you decide that this area was where your background is so varied that you could have helped all the big players, and yet you're here helping the little guy and gal that are trying to move forward. How did you end up in that space?
That's a pretty interesting situation I had. I spent most of my life in the corporate space, large enterprises. Those were my go-to clients. But when I published my book AR for Leaders last year, I was thinking about it was going to do well because it took a lot of hard work, but it did actually much better than I thought. And I did 42 keynotes to promote the book, and most of the crowd that I was able to bring into these conversations were small and medium companies, and that's pretty much how it happened. Right, the problem fell on my lap, the opportunity fell on my lap. I had to relearn everything. I still remember my first and second talk, which I brought all the corporate vernacular, and people like, what is that? Like, what are you talking about? Like, we don't care about roadmaps here, right? We don't care about long-term strategy. We care about making money on Monday. So that was this switch that turned on in my mind. Said, okay, these people don't have time for all the stuff we typically did. It's pretty much use the technology, invest, and show the ROI very quick because that's the situation. But at the same time, the exciting part of that, like if these companies are using technology properly, literally the opportunity to scale, it's amazing, and how fast they can do that with such a small investment.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's get into the details because I think people want to know maybe where to start, or if they're starting what they're doing incorrectly. That's always a question that we get. So, what's the biggest maybe misconception or difference between AI in a large enterprise and AI adoption in a small to medium size business?
That's a great point, Michael. Typically, a large enterprise will have a very good understanding of data, right? It's like
Mm.
either the abundance of data, the concerns about cybersecurity, how to treat that, which is good. At the same time, we know the dynamics. They are those typical aircraft carriers, like hard to turn, slow to adopt. Even if they say it's a priority, like the dynamics of the business, publicly traded companies, some executives are more conservative. They have the baseline of data maturity, but they don't have the speed. On the other hand, SMBs, they do not realize the power of data first place, right? So like they have data, but they haven't figured out that, well, AI is kind of the engine and it's commoditized. Everybody has access to large language model these days, but the true differentiation is the input of data, what you know about your competitors, what you know about your customers, and how you use that data to circulate inside of the AI. So the output is different, innovative, and the outcome of the business that it results is exponentially better. So to me, it's more like one needs to be educated on the importance of data, how to better capitalize and mature the data sets that they have, and then they would be ready to grow fast because they are quick, right? So that's the nature of a small and medium company. The other hand, the enterprise, they get a better background and baseline with their data, but it's much harder and slower to move. So it's a kind
Yeah.
of the contrasting things that I see all the time.
So it's interesting. Let's talk about the speed part for a minute because I think so much of what AI enables is speed and flexibility, and we won't go down the rabbit hole of the large enterprise. But for a small business that now has this new capability at their fingertips to go faster, where do you start? What's the best place to get going if you're just thinking about getting going?
The first thing that I advise companies to do, Michael, is have a good understanding of where the bottlenecks of their management system is, right? Because in most cases, people they'll have a bias to go straight into sales, right? So like everyone wants like an AI, an agent to expedite sales. But in many cases, like manufacturing or retail, they'll have massive inventory problems. They'll have very complicated collections problems. So what I tell people is very quickly try to understand what will bring the highest ROI for you from technology first, which one is easier to implement. And then with that, I'd say momentum, you go back and reinvest the money, or with a better cash flow structure, you can eventually accelerate sales. That's the first thing that I will do with these people, like help them nail where the real bottleneck is. And then choose technology based on two angles. One, whatever is part of your core, you should try to develop in house something. If you already have some IT or someone in tech, make sure that they are using AI to develop proprietary technology.
Mhm.
Now, if it's not something that is connected to your core, go and get whatever you can see as best off the shelf, right? Like if you're not in the business of selling technology, you should not be worried about developing anything in-house, right? So get the best agent that you find, get the best partner that you can find to help you implement these agents as soon as possible. But in some cases, for example, I have a client which is a small technology player, and it's a fintech. So they're developing a credit engine in-house because it's their core technology. That's where IP can actually lead to a much more valuable business in the future. But they're not worrying about developing sales agents in-house. We're bringing something off the shelf to accelerate. It's kind of these two-pronged approach where you should move fast by getting whatever it's out there available, the best technology, the best cost for you, and the best technology is the one that works for you, that fits your context. But at the same time, depending on the amount of data and what you do, it's a good idea to start to develop something in house because that could become another business unit.
Yeah. That's really interesting. As you were sharing that, this idea of bottlenecks, most people also think about the typical use case for AI is about cost. How do I remove cost from my business? If I'm a small business, and there's a lot of definitions of what a small business, small to medium sized business is. Let's think about cost, and then you think about sales, and you're giving us something kind of in between. that's a little bit different, maybe competitive analysis, maybe different product ideas. And I'm wondering, because of that, how much has this changed small and medium-sized businesses' ability to compete with larger enterprises? Because now I have speed and scale at my fingertips.
That's right. I think there's something very interesting happening here, Michael. And this is no different between enterprise and SMBs. A lot of companies are accelerating their path to death by not using AI or by not using AI properly. At the same time, I think there's a small fraction of those companies, again, either large or small or medium, which are getting the fundamentals right and they are multiplying growth by a lot. And especially small and medium companies, which are more, I'd say, prone to be tech first, to be digital first. Founders or business owners or CEOs who have been always fanatic about productivity, right? It's like one word that I say, it's so easy to think about revenue growth, cost cutting, but the real measure is productivity of your team. Because in the end of the day, you invest in marketing, you invest in technology, you invest in more headcount. How do you know what the real effect of AI is? It's hard to isolate. So what I tell people is you need to have a methodology where you measure the outcome and the output of the task, the activity. And then with the productivity in mind, that's when you can assess, okay, do we make more investment in AI? Is this really making a difference for this particular organization? And once organizations realize that they can double the productivity depending on what they're choosing to do with AI, that's where the magic happens, because it's certainty that for every dollar they invest, they'll get a 10x better productivity for a few things in the journey of a worker or in the journey of a customer.
Yeah.
And there's a very pragmatic approach that I bring and say, look, I want to see the list of all the job functions you have, how many people you have, the levels, and I want them to list like the top 5 activities they have and which ones are manual. So everything that they have to do twice, like let's say you need to type your customer name twice when you were coding, when you were creating a business proposal, or when you were sending a contract, not productive. Like
Yeah.
you're behind.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anything that you're checking online, everything that you're consulting online, like researching, that's not ideal, right? Like it's that's the exciting part. I mean, map the the workflow and see what the bottlenecks are, and choose what activities to eliminate first.
I love that sort of finding and isolating near-term problems. It's something that I think a lot of people, and I know I work in a different space, but we use a lot of AI, and I think sometimes it's overwhelming to know where to start. And you've just given us a really practical, write down your 5 most manual activities and pick one and go work on it. It so I think it's just such a practical way, and I think people are still, I see these reels of people saying, "You're using ChatGPT like a Google search." You've gotta kinda get over that hump, and I think when people look at their task list, they can start to maybe do that math. So to do that, you mentioned something a moment ago that I wanna get back to, 2 words that are important. One of them is you said the fundamentals. And the other one I'm thinking about here is a bit of the mindset that needs to shift. But before we talk about that, let's talk about the fundamentals. What are what are those if you're a small to medium sized business? What are the building blocks, the blocking and tackling essential AI skills that I need to know?
Let me start with the methodology I have on my book, Michael, that it may help. I have a method called PATX to adopt AI at scale, and P stands for the 3 Ps of AI. First, you need to understand, okay, am I applying AI into a process? P1. P2, are we creating a product with AI or changing the product experience with AI? 3, are we addressing a massive problem that we have? Let's say we're in an e-commerce and we're suffering fraud. You need to stop everything else and fix that, because that's going to put you in bankruptcy in 3 months, right?
Right.
And this is typically what people don't do well. they'll put AI onto everything they have in the company. So 6 months later, they'll have like 10 projects at 50% completion.
Mm.
And that's when business owners, they get skeptical. See, I told like technology is hard to calculate ROI. Once they got the three P's right, that's when the next phase is like the A stands for architecture. But then architecture is like a two-way street, which is organizational architecture that I tell people, and then the technology one. Like it doesn't matter if you're bringing the right technology if you're not willing to change the way you operate. Right? You
Mm.
need to change the org structure. People have to coexist with agents. Like they'll have to be familiar with the fact that okay, I have a buddy here, but it's actually a digital worker helping my marketing efforts, right? And that's a pure mindset change. That's part of the cultural change. If the business owner or the CEO, whoever is in charge of that, is not willing to take into a journey to address that, it's going to be harder to get the output. And then you go to the T portion, which is the transformation. Which to me, like after many years in technology, why most digital transformations failed to deliver its promises, it's people ignore the three P's. They ignore them in the organizational structure, the changing culture and mindset, and thought that buying technology would be a good shortcut for bad management, right? And once you get those things well orchestrated, that's when you go to the X phase, which is the multiplication of results,
Mm.
because then initiatives will start to compound among organizations inside of the company, right? But it's kind of it was on purpose that I did that because I was tired of seeing these digital transformation conversations all over the place. And now it's AI, but before it was cloud, before it was mobile. Like, how many companies can really put a stake in the ground and say, okay, I got 100% return of this investment? It's very hard, very hard.
Yeah. There's a stat that's was published by McKinsey, I believe, years ago that 70% of all transformations fail. It's something that I lean on quite a bit. And maybe as a small aside, I've just finished a national workforce study around change and transformation. And it actually gets to this conversation that I'll share some of the data on, which is what you're describing, that technology it's not a solution in and of itself. It has to be enabled by people who understand. And one of the fundamentals I'm hearing you say is this concept of focus. Focus on something, get it done. Don't launch 50 projects all at once. Don't peanut butter spread it across your organization. Pick a problem, solve that, build some confidence, and go to the next one, which
Right.
it maybe inserts something that I'm curious about your stories of. Every time we try something new, we go through a performance dip. Before we get to the productivity improvement, we go backwards. And for a small or medium-sized business, that lag or that dip can be challenging because it's maybe you don't have the cash reserves, maybe you don't have the time, maybe you don't have the capacity to withstand the inefficiency. How should I think about that if I'm a small or medium-sized business in terms of that U-shaped curve that I will inevitably hit before I go back up and start to get really good?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite ones, Michael. I when I talk to clients, I ask, okay, there's good and bad news here, right? Like the good news is you understand the power of AI and how fast you can grow. But the bad news is how much time available do you have? Like it's like, are you fishing for new things to do? Like, because the bad news is you're gonna be a much busier during this transition. Like you're gonna have to work like 20-30% more because you'll have to coexist with two different processes, the new one and the old one,
That's right.
right? And this is what many tech providers don't advise or tell these people. Say, yeah, you may have technology staff, but in order to make the culture right, in order to change the mindset, in order to assess the impact with customers, business owners, executives, they will have to be in the trenches,
Mm.
right? And to me, it's not, in the end of the day, a matter of having or not more capital or cash. It's that realization that they will have to balance out how much time they keep invested in the core versus into the new to make sure that it's well implemented.
Yeah. One of the things that I talk about in the work that I do in the book that I've written is we call that the messy middle, which is I'm not far enough along to see the improvements yet, but I'm too far down to sort of stop. And so I have to live in this messy, crunchy, asymmetric place where I'm not quite in the new world. And seems to me that that's another fundamental that you're talking about is the ability to be resilient and withstand this transition. And that's where most people give up on whether it's AI adoption or anything. That's the part where people go, I told you this was never going to work. Let's go back to the old way. And of course, then you're doomed to repeat the cycle.
Yeah. And this is the exciting part about SMBs, Michael, because most of these people, they started their own business, right? So they have that resilience, which is different in the enterprise space. Like executives, CXOs, they know that they need to be monitoring, like, but they act more as sponsors, right?
Right.
And they lack that resilience, and they try to delegate. They try, and that's where things. And on the other hand, like when you see CXOs that are very much in the trenches, not only delegating to, whatever chosen management consulting company is to make the transformation work, that's when we see things actually happening, right? Like that's the exciting part. I mean, these business owners, they bring that DNA of dealing with the hustle, the abstraction portion of the transformation, and the need to be there no matter what level you are.
Yeah.
Right? It's like in the corporate space, we have, look, at this level, not get down into the trenches, but in the end of the day, I think even the best generals were the ones who were behind the desk, but also in the battlefield.
Right. Right. So let's talk about a couple scenarios because I think it's good for people to maybe know where am I on the journey. There's maybe small medium sized businesses that haven't gotten started. There's some that have gotten started, and there's some that are down the path. Let's go in reverse order. If I'm down the path, what resources, where do I go for maybe more help? I've solved my first couple problems, but I don't know where to go next. What does that look like in terms of where do I go to get help with that next version of maybe maturity or scale or growth?
Um, I think if we can find a way to maximize what the best answer to this question is, Michael, there's money there itself, right? Like, because, like, honestly, how many available sources we have? Like this podcast is one of them. Honestly, you can use AI to teach you about AI. You
Right.
can hire consultants. You can, hire a tech partner that you may have in your territory. But to me, the most important thing is it's not something you can fully delegate. You need to keep your curiosity high.
Mm,
You need to be the one seeing what is out there. And then you need to understand what the potential is so you can set the bar as high as you should back to your company and organization, right? So to me, that's the one. Like I, I just finished an AI boot camp with 80 business owners, and they know they're not going to be the ones operating and applying AI 100% of the time, but most of them were there because they wanted to learn so they could see, okay, now I understand the potential. I can go back home and say, okay, now if I do this, I can raise the sales quota by 20, 30%, and people should not cry when I do that, right? Now I know what AI can do, so I demand more from my technology partners. To me, that's the number one thing. Keep your curiosity high, to make sure that you set the proper goals, which are a way and must have a way more aggressive. Then the second thing is choose a good technology partner. I don't get married for the long haul with the same partner, which to me it's one of the tricky things today. Many companies, they will go and sign a large contract with the big three as far as cloud and all the AI products that come together, but one tool is not going to be enough. Like, it's not going to be enough. Companies will have to be open to give employees some level of autonomy so that they can find the right tool for the context of the work they do, and make sure that partners come. to the table with that mindset, right? So it's not, hey, I have a good partnership with Microsoft, I have a good partnership with Google, I have a good, they will have to create that bundle of solutions that will fit a business the most.
And it seems like with that, finding the right help, there's a lot of people. There's you. There's a lot of other people that compete in the space that you do. How do I know this is like finding someone to work on your house? There's a million contractors out there. How do I pick the right one? How do I know somebody's not just selling me an empty template? I see a lot of things on social media from some companies, and it's like 15 minutes a day, and here's my 30-day boot camp, and you train on a million different tools, and by the end of it you'll be a millionaire because AI will create more millionaires than at any point in history. How do I sift through all of that? It just seems completely overwhelming for folks.
Well, that's why we are here, right? Like, number one, being very pragmatic. There are two leagues here in the AI game, what I call the minor league and the major league.
Mm.
The minor league is pretty much formed by the marketeers of AI, right? So they learned everything about AI on the back of chat GPT, but they barely know what data is. Like, that's a very simple sniff test. If someone knocks on the door, okay, got your tool, tell me how you're going to help me optimize my data structure and strategy. That question alone is going to eliminate a bunch of amateurs.
Wow. Yeah.
The second thing is what I tell people: think about AI as a student on fifth grade that always requires more training and education. And over time, a bunch of well educated fifth graders, they will make to sixth grade and seventh grade. And that's kind of the mindset to get AI to do what is right. Why am I saying that? Because very few technology partners, they come ready to train AI for a particular purpose and business and mission you are in. Somebody was gonna knock on the door and say, okay, I have a nice AI agent for sales, but they're selling the exact same toolkit to a retailer, and the same thing they're gonna sell to a manufacturing company or to a service provider. If they are not willing to be in the trenches to understand what you do well, profile the DNA of high performance of your humans at work, right?
Mm.
Because this is very important. Okay, you want to sell more. How do you sell? How do you train your sales personnel today? If you don't have that well documented, if you don't have data to back that thing, it's going to be hard to educate the robot to do the work that someone is already not doing at its peak capacity. So that second one, like the structure and the strategy to train AI for your particular use case, that's what you really see the major leagues only doing,
Yeah.
because it requires time and commitment to be in the trenches.
I think that if you're listening to this and watching this and taking away anything, that may be the most sage piece of advice to take, which is if someone's selling you the easy button or selling you a template, that's probably a signal that they're not really understanding what you do, and finding a partner that's willing to get under the hood and really dig in is a really important attribute for finding the right person or persons or company to help you on your journey. And we're almost at time, but I want to get back to the first part because I think it's a great wrap up. We talked about a company that's had some success and they're ready to level up their expectations and where to go next, and you've given us some thoughts there. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. If I haven't done anything and I'm a leader who's listening, I want to start my journey. What do the next 90 days look like? Where do I go first, maybe second and third? How do I just get going, knowing I'm not ready for the major leagues yet? I'm still just getting started.
Three things: sign up for whatever webinars you may find. I can send some details and recommendations. I have a masterclass about AI for executives and business owners that people can rely on. The second thing, it's more like sign up for three AI platforms and give your team a challenge. They should each use one of those three and come back to you every 15 days to explain something that they started to do as part of their day-to-day work that made it like 10-20% more productive. And you should look at that with the same discipline that you look at your sales forecast and revenue, right? Because to me that's the practical way to change people's mindset, showing them the possibilities. Like, look, we're not in the business of firing people, but we're in the business where we must demand higher performance and goals with the same people and capacity we have today.
Yeah.
But it's a process of evolution that it's not only myself as the CXO or the business owner, it involves all of us, right? That's, if you're starting, that's where I would go and do, because people can get scared about, why am I going to embrace this thing just to get fired? Well, I think that's where you, as a business owner, you have the opportunity not to think about cost cutting, but to exponentially grow with the same investment.
Yeah. It's just, I love the idea. And I'll tell you, as a small business myself, I've done the same thing. I've tried multiple platforms. I have multiple platforms that I use. We're on one right now. We're using Restream. I don't have any affiliation. I just use them. But there's all sorts of AI built into this engine that allows you to create clips and do different things and schedule and all that stuff. And that's an experimentation mindset that I built to try to move into this space. And I think that's the second thing you're reminding us of is try things and figure it out and unleash your workforce, however big. Maybe you've got a team of 5, maybe you've got a team of 50. Let them go be creative. They're the ones closest to the business. And I just think that's such a great recommendation. We're at time here. This is, I mean, we could keep going. That was kind of a nice summary, but I always like to end on, again, we've talked about a lot of stuff here over the last 30 minutes. Before we get to your bonus question, what are the kind of 2 to 3 things that you want the listeners to take away? If I'm a small to medium sized business, what are the 2 to 3 things you really want them to take away from this conversation about getting started with AI and where to go?
The number one thing, Michael, and it maybe is scary, is we have 2 years to fight irrelevance in business. Like, it's hard to hear that, but before we had the excuse of time to make things happen and transform. Now we have just 2 years.
Wow.
So, and many people will fall behind, right? And businesses will disappear. Like, the mortality rate of businesses, it's already happening. Like, so
Yeah.
if you see the amount of companies that are getting unlisted from the S&P 500, companies that are disappearing, the request for um, Chapter 11 and everything, it's growing on every single country in the planet. At the same time, the opportunity to scale faster and for a small and medium business to become a large one with a fraction of the investment it took their, I'd say, large competitors to get there, that's the most exciting part. That's the most exciting part. Just have that opportunity in mind, and the future is bright. The second thing is, again, keep the curiosity high. What I tell people is, you're not in the construction environment. You are in the tech construction environment. You're not in the education environment. You are in the ed tech environment, right? You're not in the financial sector. You are in the fintech space. Whatever you do today, add the word tech,
Mm.
because that's what you need to do. But at the same time, that's where the biggest reward will be for the next phase of your business.
Yeah. This idea of reimagining yourself and the journey you've been on, and for small
Right?
companies, that's tough. You invest a lot of yourself into the identity of your company, and reimagining that brings up all sorts of
It,
different
it,
identity challenges that can be tough to withstand.
it's happening for all of us. I was talking to a client. He's a partner at a very large law firm, and the demand for lawyers are like 30-35% lower
Yeah.
during the past 12, because most of the people who would hire an attorney first place, they're doing that with ChatGPT.
Right.
Like, if we're a marketeer, people are doing away more with AI before they go to a marketing resource. Like, if we in technology, more and more people are doing their own platforms or making them in house.
Yeah.
It's happening for all of us. Now, how do you become a leader there instead of a follower of these trends for every single person in every single business? That's
Yeah.
a formula that is dictating whoever is going to be the winner tomorrow.
Yeah. And I hear you saying in order to be a leader, you've got to get started, get curious, be resilient, lean in and keep trying. This has been great, Vinicius. I wanna leave it there and finish with our closing tradition before we learn a little bit more about where we can follow you. As I mentioned before, we have a closing tradition on this podcast that I stole from another one, which I think is a great idea. And it's funny how these questions always kind of work out. So I think it fits with the conversation we've just have had, which is how does a lack of critical thinking affect the trust and the performance of your industry and the work that you do? How does that maybe reactivity start to impact this space that we've been talking about?
That's a deep one, Michael, and one that I'm very passionate. I see a lot of people in general in companies outsourcing their thinking and creativity to AI. Right? Like they don't think anymore. They do not think about, okay, what is going to be the best possible solution and experience to a client? How do I think about getting this job more optimized? And then I go to AI to get the mission accomplished. People are confusing the mission that only us as humans can play to make us always differentiated from technology, but they're just, hey, I got this problem, AI, fix it. To me, that's a big one, Michael, because it's what will keep us competitive. Like, do not outsource your critical thinking to AI. Like, I always like to tell people, look, I'm a big fan of drawing things. Like, I architect everything before I get AI to help me build.
Yeah, I
AI
do
is
the
a
same.
building tool. It's not a thinking tool.
I do the
It's not
same.
a creative tool.
Yeah.
Like, and no kidding that I don't know if you've seen this, but a lot of people like in Silicon Valley, they're now buying typewriters. I got one for me just to make sure that like we keep on thinking, we force ourselves to think, to write, but in a way that literally continues to fire the neurons we have.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice. And it's a great recommendation. I think the AI world is ripe for outsourcing everything. And I think it's a great reminder to not do that. Uh, Venetius, this has really just been full of practical advice as well as more conceptual advice around mindset. I just want to thank you for your time. Where can people follow you? Where can they find you? How can they reach out if they want to work with you? Maybe you talked about your book. Where do we find all of that?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn, V David, VDA, IVD. My website, viniciusdavid.com. These are the two channels that I use the most. So that's where I can be reached out.
All right. We will be sure to put that in the show notes. And as always, we share clips and bits of this conversation full of so much practical advice. I want to thank you again for your time. I know it's later into the day there for you in Brazil. So
My pleasure,
thank you
Michael.
for
And,
spending.
congratulations for putting together this show and making something that was just a hobby into a very professional and honestly important medium to educate people. I think you've had such a great career trajectory, which I admire a lot, and now you're using that to help others to develop, which is super fun.
I appreciate that. I'm having a great time. The show's got a great following, and so thank you for your time and for your expertise and for the compliment. I really do. That means a lot to me. So, thank you for those that tuned in today, that were that were watching and listening live. Thank you for those of you that are listening on your podcast. Again, please do be sure to subscribe. As I mentioned in the middle of the call, we're getting ready to release a national workforce study on change. I saw the data yesterday. It's incredibly eye-opening and I think fits with this conversation about change and how we adopt to the world around us, particularly in the world of work. It's going to be exciting stuff. I'm excited to share that with you. Thanks again, Vinicius. We'll see you all
Happy
next week.
Bye.
Thank you so much.